Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone. Great to have you in our YouTube stream, and we continue the SAP Cloud Lifecycle Management Webcast Series. Today, we will talk about overview of various downtime optimization approaches. Our expert speakers for today are Boris Rubrat and Jens Figer. Both are part of Cloud and Lifecycle Management team at SAP. My name is Larissa Brinkman from the SAP Global User Groups organization, and I'm your host for today. We kindly ask you to place your questions in the live chat, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. The replay of this session will be available under the same link immediately after the session. With this, I wish you great interaction and kindly ask Boris to take over.
Thank you very much, Larissa. And warm welcome from my side as well. My name is Boris. I work as a product manager on the software update manager and on various topics in the software logistics area. And today, I'm glad that we have a special guest with us, Jens.
Yeah, thank you so much, Boris. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is Jens speaking. I worked as product manager in the past together with Boris in the SUM area for the techniques near zero downtime maintenance and zero downtime option. Just recently, I moved out of the organization, so we are currently in a kind of a transition period. So my successor will take over very soon. That does not mean that you don't get any information. Of course, you are able to also approach still me or Boris, and then later also my successor. With this, handing over back to you, Boris, and I will jump in later for my topics.
Excellent. Thank you, Jens. So this is, of course, a session as part of the knowledge transfer for the SAP user groups. And there we have a special series, the SAP Cloud and Lifecycle Management Webcast Series. And from that, this is an extract showing those sessions that are mostly related to the software update manager and to maintenance activities. We already had an overview on the software update manager, and we had an overview on the migration option of the tool. Now we are right in this overview on the various downtime optimization approaches of this tool, software update manager, or abbreviated as SUM or SUM tool. We will have other sessions. You see them listed here, and they are, of course, listed in the URL that you see up above there. That is, again, just an extract of all those sessions as part of this CLM series. And please check the webpage for latest information on the session dates, especially. So now focusing on the software update manager. You know, that's the tool for several approaches, update, upgrade, migration, conversion, other things. And now this magic box has a couple of approaches that are focusing on reducing the downtime. So if we unpack, unbox those approaches, you will see that there are a couple of names, and we state there are a couple of Z features because most of those abbreviations have a Z in the name, and you may wonder what was the name of the approach. So there's zero downtime option, there's nZDM, nZDT, quite similar, downtime optimized conversion, downtime optimized DMO. So it's easy to get lost, and that's the right reason why we have this session to guide you through to the central places where you find information. And so don't judge by the name. It's important that you know where to look for details. And that's why the essential information of this session is there is the place that helps you. There is a place in the SAP support portal. Up above, you see there's a link. And this page in the SAP support portal lists these approaches that are reducing the downtime for specific activities. And you will see on the page that there are approaches. We will discuss those approaches. Most of them do have an abbreviation. That's why we call them Z technologies. Most of them have this Z in there. They are typically for specific scenarios only, so for update, upgrade, or for migration or conversion. And then we have listed the availability of those approaches. Availability, most of them are part of the delivery of the software update manager. Some are in a pilot state and some are not really a tool, but a service that are offered. Most of them are described in an SAP node. So you see the SAP node related to those scenarios. And especially it's easy to get confused because some of those approaches have a similar name. In the up above, we have the near zero downtime maintenance for ABAP. That is an example for update and upgrade scenarios as well as system conversion. And this is available within the tool, so there's no restriction. And we have down below a line where we see a similar name, nZDT. That is near zero downtime technology, but that is not part of the tool. It's a service. It's available for several scenarios, but it's a service-based approach. So you will not get an option in the user interface of the software update manager. Instead, you may consult the SAP node, you may contact SAP to get a drastic reduction of the downtime for your scenario, but it's executed by experts from SAP. So it's not a tool that you can use on your own. And that's the reason why we have this session, to provide an overview on those approaches and especially having a short introduction what the main idea of those approaches is. So that's the essential information. There is a page in the support portal listing all those tools to get more information after this session even. And before we start to introduce those approaches, scenarios specifically, the question is, well, how can we group those approaches, how we can explain those approaches? And there is one idea to say, well, we compare those approaches with a house. So that's why we have the title Software Update Manager and the analogy to a house. You may live in a flat, in a room, or in a house. And so what we do is we list the scenarios that the software update manager is supporting: update, upgrade, database migration, and system conversion as the major scenarios. There are others, but those are the major ones. And we will have a short look on the technical background, and we'll compare this with this analogy in house. So for the software update manager, you see the name update. An update of an SAP system is to apply support package or support package stacks, or to apply feature package stacks, as they are called in the SAP S/4HANA world, or to implement an enhancement package. That is one scenario. We call this update of the SAP system. And now, if you are living in a flat or in a house, the analogy would be you decide that you paint the walls of your rooms. So it is an activity, but it's limited in the effort to be spent. Whereas an upgrade, if the software update manager is executing an upgrade, that would be lifting the system to a new major release. For example, you do have an SAP S/4HANA system on release 2020, and you upgrade the system to release 2021. That would be more in the analogy than painting the walls. You would renovate the room, so more effort in this. Next line is database migration. So your system is running on a database on a specific type. And now database migration as scenario of the software update manager is you move your system to a new database. It's running on MaxDB, for example, and you use the database migration option, DMO of the tool, to move the system to be running on HANA database. We compare this with the analogy of a house. That would be you are living in a flat and you move to a similar flat. So the flat as such may have minor changes, but maybe the infrastructure in the house is better. That's the reason why you move to HANA database. Finishing up with the last line here, a system conversion is one scenario of the software update manager. That would be you have an ECC system in your on-premise world, and you move or you convert the system to SAP S/4HANA. And that, if the source system is not yet on the HANA database, may include the database migration as well. If we have a look at the analogy, that would be you are living in a flat and now you move to a house. That means you have more rooms probably, and it's more comfortable. That's the first part of the slide. So putting those software update manager scenarios with some technical background into the analogy in a house and changes there. The other thing that we have on this slide is what kind of changes are coming with those scenarios. You can imagine that with an upgrade, with an update, and especially with a system conversion, there are changes, especially on the database. And so the structural conversion means that the field of an existing table gets a new structure. The field content has to be adapted and converted. And if we again have a look at the analogy, that would be you have a room that is a bedroom, and now you change the room to kitchen. So you will have to adapt something in the room. That is the structure conversion. Next line, a data conversion. That is the example where we have the system conversion in the ECC old world. There are tables, and now in the S/4HANA world, we have a new data model also on the database level, and that means we have to move and adapt the table content from those old tables to the new tables of the S/4HANA data model, like table ACDoc-A or MATDoc. Comparing this with a house, with a move from a flat to a house, the number and the size of the rooms changed, so we have to adapt the interior during this conversion, during this move from a flat to a house. Table import happens in some scenarios. That means there are customizing tables where SAP is delivering content, and with the activity, the new content from SAP is put into those tables. That would be you're living in a flat or in a house. There is a kitchen, and the kitchen furniture was provided by the landlord, and now it's time that the landlord provides new kitchen furniture. So he or she will put new furniture into your kitchen. Finishing up with the last line, application defined procedures may be part of the activity with the software update manager. And there is a variety of examples here. Along with an update or upgrade, the data have to be adapted, and this may happen with one of these functionalities here. After import methods, or XPath or XClass or silent data migration infrastructure may come into the play, so that the software and the table entries are functional with a new software version. That would be that you refurbish the existing furniture in your flat or in your house. With this, we would like to get a common understanding on some activities, because they are some of them are related to the scenarios and to the approaches that we're going to discuss in a minute. So again, a couple of approaches, and you may wonder, well, now, how is it possible to group those approaches that we had listed on the other slide before? And there's one picture that we would like to show you as well before we dig into the details, and that is the question, how can we group this? SAP Software Update Manager approaches. That's the question. And now the idea is to group where we have the old world of the SAP Business Suite with ERP and other components, and we have the new world, the new product family, SAP S/4HANA, which is always running on the SAP HANA database, of course. And now we're going to see some areas where we think we can group those technologies, those approaches, and those features. So starting with SAP S/4HANA, the update and upgrade technology that the Software Update Manager is offering, in case you do have an SAP S/4HANA system, you would like to update or upgrade this, then you can use the standard approach, or you can use near zero downtime maintenance, or you can use zero downtime option. Again, I'm using those abbreviations, and we're going to have a look at all those specific scenarios, those abbreviations afterwards, slide by slide, step by step. So that is an area where those two approaches can be used. Next point here is inside the SAP Business Suite, your ERP system may not yet run on SAP HANA database, on any DB like MaxDB or something. Then you can use the database migration option of the Software Update Manager. You can use DMO to do the database migration to move your system onto the SAP HANA database. And for this approach, database migration, we have the downtime optimization called Downtime Optimized DMO that will be explained shortly in this session. So that's the new world and the old world. And now about the transition from the old to the new world is called system conversion. And of course, the system conversion starts with one ERP source system and converts the system to an SAP S/4HANA system. And that is a scenario, a transition scenario that works on an ERP system on any database, and it works on an ERP system that is already on the SAP HANA database. Difference is, of course, if the source is already in a HANA database, we do not need the database migration. So that's why different approaches are to be considered here, as we will see. So for a source system on any DB, we can reduce the downtime by using downtime optimized conversion, explained later. We can use downtime optimized DMO, so obviously to tune the migration part of the conversion process, and nZDT can be applied. Again, that is not a feature in the tool, it's a service delivered by SAP. You see this little asterisk, this list is service-based. Similar, if the source system is already on HANA database, the system conversion can be executed with a standard approach. Then we have the capability of downtime optimized conversion, an approach of the Software Update Manager that is generally available for educated experts. You can use nZDM instead, explained on the following slide. And again, there is a service, of course, that you may consider if you have a large source database and very hard expectations on the downtime duration. That would be a possibility how to group those approaches. That was the kind of a preparation. And with this, we're going to jump to the first of those technologies. So the question is always for each of our scenarios, typically the Software Update Manager has a lot of uptime processing. Then there are some downtime activities. And the question is, which part from the downtime processing is moved to uptime processing with which approach? Yeah? And there we start with near zero downtime maintenance. Handing over to Jens.
All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Boris. Adding to what you already learned from the overview Boris presented, we are here dealing with the approaches, the two approaches that I'm going to talk about, is about upgrades and updates, right? So imagine you have reached S/4HANA, or you're still on the classic SAP ECC world. The approach that we delivered a couple of years ago with the near zero downtime maintenance focuses on moving the so-called table import, what you already learned, also with the analogy to the house, and the conversion part into the uptime processing. So on the next slide, I have some illustration here. So you can imagine we have kind of boxes that are influencing the length of the downtime. And as said, mainly the nZDM, near zero downtime maintenance, takes over parts of table content and parts of the conversion. So I explicitly say also parts, because we have to carefully think about what is the upgrade changing in terms of which tables are touched. For instance, the very, very large application tables, they are typically not considered by default to reduce the downtime, because you can imagine if a table is considered and handled in uptime handling, the table has to be somehow encapsulated for the different release versions. So imagine you come from S/4HANA 2020 and you go for an S/4HANA 2021. And there are particular changes happening on the table, and we say this particular changes should be carved out from the downtime and moved over to uptime. That also means we have to make sure that a business user that still works on the source release can't see any change that comes with the target release. With the nZDM approach, we also came across the and came around with the record and replay framework, also known as CRR, capture, record, and replay framework, in order to ensure the consistency of all business transactions. So in other words, if a table is moved into uptime, we also have to have an exact clone of those tables in two different versions. One reflects the source release. This table is accessed by the business user, and the second version of the table reflects the target release. And of course, if the business user still operates on the table, we have to make sure that the changes, so it could be inserts, could be deletes or updates, are replicated into the second version of the table, and that is done with the CRR framework. So I said, if we clone very large application tables, that can have also a significant impact to the database footprint. So we need to allocate that space. Hence, we have set a default threshold to move tables to uptime up to 50 gigabytes. This value can be overwritten. If you want to learn more, I have also here referenced the main SAP notes on nZDM down below. Also, I can highly encourage you to take a look to the SUM guide. So there we have also quite some chapters around nZDM and how that works. In case you get stuck with any CRR related issue, we even have troubleshooting sections in the guide, etc. So I said, this technology was there for quite some years. And then back in 2016, we also learned that nZDM does not meet all downtime requirements from all customers. So we came up with the approach zero downtime option. If we just jump to the next slide, you have a very, very similar screen here. It basically also moves boxes from downtime to uptime, and that typically happens now for all approaches. The thing is here, zero downtime means now we really have to take care on all tables that are changed during the upgrade, handled then in uptime. I start here with the high-level solution approach. And as you can see here, we start with the release 1. That's typically our source release. And I take again the example of SAP S/4HANA 2020. And what you can see, we have, after some upgrade steps, typically in the standard or also in the nZDM approach, we enter the so-called technical downtime. This technical downtime is completely eliminated with the zero downtime option of SUM. So hence what we have to do now is we run all the former downtime related steps also in parallel to the business operations, while the end users are connected to an intermediate state of the system reflecting the source release. And this is introducing a terminology called bridge subsystem. Yeah, so I don't want to go into the technical deep dive here because that will come on October 12th, where I have a dedicated session on ZDO, but just very high level, you can imagine here, the magic more or less is done on a database level. So if you have an existing system with like 3-4 application servers, these application servers consist of work processes and they are connected to a particular database schema. And this connection behind is changed. And that's the magic that we do. Yeah, so we have one key aspect here that we always have to consider. And this is going into the direction of if anything is changed by the upgrade, which is then reflecting the target release, must not be visible to the source release. So encapsulating the two releases, release 1 and release 2, that's key. That's very, very essential and important. And this is ensured by moving over the end users to the bridge subsystem that can only see tables related to the source release. As I said, if we run a zero downtime option upgrade, we have to make sure that all tables that are changed by the upgrade are then also existing in 2 different versions to make sure that the bridge does not see any target release activities. So one more thing that I want to explain here on that particular slide, and I want to emphasize you to take a look to the main SAP node that is also listed here, 2707731. Later on, I will also put in the chat the SAP support portal page on ZDO, where you can get more information. And especially one information I want to outline here. Zero downtime option became generally available for SAP S/4HANA starting from the release 2020. Under the condition that an educated expert can execute this approach. Educated expert means we have a dedicated training. It's called ADM 330E. It's part of SAP Learning Hub that you have to go through. And in the end, you go through a knowledge badge assessment, and then you're good to go. As said, all the information is packed into the support portal page, and I'm going to put that very soon in the chat that you have it also for later. And again, I want to advertise the session on October 12th, where I have the deep dive on the zero downtime option. And with that, handing over back to you, Boris.
Thank you very much, Jens. Looking forward for your session on zero downtime option. Now, we had those 2 approaches near zero downtime maintenance, zero downtime option, both apply for update and upgrading S/4HANA systems. Now, it's about downtime optimized DMO. So obviously, it's about the migration feature of the software update manager. And this downtime optimized DMO, sometimes called uptime migration, will take the migration part from the downtime and will at least partially move this to uptime. So migration of large tables is executed in uptime. Let's have a detailed look on this. Downtime optimized DMO is reducing the technical downtime by migrating large application tables, selected large application tables already in uptime. In general, for a scenario that includes database migration, this scales with the database size. The more content we have to migrate, the longer the downtime is. Downtime optimized DMO approach moves migration of selected large application tables to uptime. So we have to manually select those tables, and you get support from SAP by report to select those tables. And if we migrate table content already in uptime while end users are still working on the system, the tool will have to ensure that those changes on those already migrated tables is considered. So again, we have a data replay mechanism that those uptime changes by the end users are considered. The general idea is the standard migration scenario of software update manager has an uptime. There are some downtime reductions like shadow operations, but then we enter the downtime where the migration of all application tables to the target database happens. Instead, downtime optimized DMO will not only have, of course, the same shadow operations, but also migrate those large application tables already in uptime. And in downtime, we have the remaining application tables and the delta from those already migrated. And so the downtime is shorter compared to the standard approach. There's a central SAP node on that listed here, and there's a blog in the SAP community explaining this as well. So again, downtime optimized DMO is focusing on the migration part, and this applies for database migration of an ERP system inside the classical business suite world to SAP HANA database, for example, but also for the scenario of a system conversion to SAP S/4HANA. So that was database migration listed here. The next part is listed here. Downtime optimized conversion that is covering migration and data conversion from downtime to uptime. So what does it mean? Migration is kept in brackets here. Well, the background is system conversion from an ERP source system is capable to convert the system independent of whether it's already on HANA database. If the source is already on HANA database, then there's no migration part, and then this part will not be moved from downtime to uptime because it's not part of the downtime. Let's have a look on the details of this approach. Downtime optimized conversion, similar name, but more efficient. Of course, this one is only possible for a system conversion. Migration and data conversion is partially moved to uptime. So what's the picture here? We have a long uptime processing, a downtime. Technical some downtime consists of migration, if source is not yet on HANA, update and conversion, some post activities. And if you're familiar with the system conversion, you know that there are some conversion activities to be executed after the software update manager, the fin and material ledger data conversion. Now, the big benefit of the downtime optimized conversion is we move not only the migration, if required, to uptime, but also the data conversion that is executed by the software update manager. And even that in the standard approach is not executed by the software update manager, is moved to uptime processing. So this is moving the table conversion and even the field conversion for specific cases. And we can, in addition, select large application tables that we manually detected to be migrated in uptime already. That's a very powerful approach that is generally available for educated experts again. So we have a 2 days training class on that. And after that, you apply for a badge, knowledge badge, and then you can apply this on your own without the need to involve an SAP consultant. And we have a page here in the SAP support portal that lists details like the training, like things to be considered in the project as such, as the approach allows to reduce the downtime, but you have a higher effort in the overall project. You may have more test runs, for example, and a clear alignment in the project as such. With this, we are now approaching the last approach here that is called near zero downtime technology. And again, don't mix it up with nZDM that we have already seen. It's a part of the tool, but near zero downtime technology is a service-based approach, and it's focusing on nearly all the downtime activities. It comes with higher effort, with more costs, but with a drastic reduction of downtime. It's a quite complicated procedure. Nevertheless, let's have a look at the major blocks. This part here is now the source system. That is a production system where end users are working on, and they are working on the system during a long time, although the tool will or the project will already execute some activities. So there is a change recording switched on in the system so that every activities of the users are recorded. Then, as a second step, the system is being cloned. It's a one-to-one clone of the productive system. And then the activities are executed on the clone instead of the productive system. So the system conversion is being executed on the clone. If the source is not yet on HANA, of course, we have a database switch here as well. End users are still working on the system. So those phases that in their standard conversion are downtime for the software update manager, for the end users, this is uptime. And then as a remaining downtime, we have a small window where we synchronize the changes from the productive system to the target, including the data conversion to the new data model of SAP S/4HANA. And afterwards, the productive system is switched off, was switched off, and the target becomes the new production system. Again, service-based approach, very powerful, comes with higher effort, but of course, a drastic reduction of the downtime. With this, we are at the end of our little journey through those approaches that are part of the software update manager, and in addition, the nZDT service offering. To put this into a context, it's a bit a teaser that may bring you to the idea to dig into details like the session from Jens on zero downtime option, or considering the SAP support portal page where those approaches are listed with respective links to SAP notes and potentially to blog posts as well. Now, let's see if there are any questions in the chat, Larissa.
Thank you, Boris. Thank you, Jens. And yes, we have one question in the chat. The question is from Rupali, and the question is, by using such approaches, is there still need of parallel landscape?
Yes, in general, if I get the question correct, parallel landscape means dual maintenance. You have a source ECC system, for example, and the development system. Let's take the example of a system conversion. Then you would convert your development system to an SAP S/4HANA system. And you may consider to have still a development system on the ERP level landscape so that you can apply fixes.
Boris, you seems to be on mute.
Not that I'm aware.
So now you're also gone with the audio.
You can't hear me any longer?
Yes, now we can hear you now. Thank you.
Did you get my answer at all, or shall I repeat this?
Please repeat it because there was some break in the audio. So please repeat it for the participants.
Yeah, so dual landscape was the question. And my response was, let's take the scenario of a system conversion where you have an ECC source system, you have a development landscape with a development system in the ECC level. You will convert your development system to SAP S/4HANA so that you can afterwards do development on the S/4HANA level, but you will consider to keep an ERP development system so that you can deliver fixes or hot fixes in the still productive ERP source system as long as it's not yet converted. That was my answer.
Thank you, Boris. I hope the question and the answer was clear. We have one more question in the chat. Can we migrate SAP ECC running on iSeries AC400 to Suite on HANA and upgrade the ECC version with a downtime optimized DMO approach?
As far as I remember, well, I'm not sure. You will have to check the SAP note on downtime optimized DMO. I do not want to tell anything wrong, as the SAP note lists exactly for which source database types we support the downtime optimized migration approach to SAP S/4HANA. Yeah. So that would be the reason to consult the SAP support portal page to find the SAP node for downtime optimized DMO there, where the node number is listed anyhow in the presentation to be sure that it works. Thank you.
By the way, I've also placed this information in the chat. The PDF to this session will be uploaded in the description to this video shortly. So please be aware of this and leverage the information and the PDF that we were sharing. And also I've placed in the chat the links to the support portal page.
Excellent.
On different approaches. So for those who are interested in this, for your convenience, just click in the chat. We have the next question. Some upgrades configuration. Tuning process counts, how much it optimize upgrade conversion. I think it's a kind of comparison.
Yeah, so my understanding of the question is that well, we have introduced some approaches to reduce the downtime, but even with a standard approach, there are some possibilities to tune the procedure to reduce the downtime. And not in all cases you will have to use one of those approaches. So the appropriate question, the good question is how to tune this. I will not provide an exact number of those processes, since this is exactly the way of tuning. The example of a database migration, you will have to tune the number of R3 load pairs or number of R3 load processes that are used in the downtime. So you will repeat the migration. There are quite a number of tuning opportunities, like the benchmarking that is only focusing on the migration part, like the test cycle loop. So that is exactly a good part where you can influence, even for the standard approach, the downtime. Yeah. And for the example of after reload, this has to be found out based on your setup of your application host on which you start the software update manager on the performance on that host, as an example. Thank you.
Excellent. I hope the answer is clear. There is also a follow-up question to the previous question. Downtime optimized DMO with system upgrade for Suite on HANA. Is it possible?
So if you are targeting Suite on HANA and your source system is not yet on SAP HANA database, then it's possible. So assuming, to name an SAP database, your ECC system is running on MaxDB, then it may be running on enhancement package level 4. Then you can combine the database migration from MaxDB to SAP HANA database with the upgrade of the SAP software to enhancement package 8. That is possible with the DMO option, and even possible to apply downtime optimized DMO, which is available for some 2.0 only. So I refer to the overview on the software update manager, where we've explained there is a version 1.1 for software update manager and some 2.0. Thank you.
Okay, so I hope the answers were clear. I can't see additional questions in the chat, but please, I can only encourage our listeners to state their questions in the chat. As I've already mentioned, I've placed the link to the material that were mentioned during the presentation for your convenience. So please go ahead and leverage those for your work. Now, I can't see additional questions in the chat. With this, first of all, thank you, Boris. Thank you, Jens, for your presentation. Also, thank you to all the listeners of our session today. We will be very much, you will be very much welcome to join our upcoming sessions. And as I've already mentioned, the PDF of this session will be available for download shortly after the session today. With this, thank you very much. Enjoy your day and hope to have you in one of our upcoming sessions. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.